Thank you for tuning in to TalkWad.com, the world's fastest growing internet radio network. Please check out all the other great shows on www.talkwad.com.
It's Talking Sports with CJ and Fonz on SportsSlamRadio.com. It's sports hardcore and fully uncensored. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Talking Sports with CJ on SportsSlamRadio.com. I'm back after a week off. I was on vacation, went up to Rhode Island, saw some snow, about 25 inches of it. Had a great time with my girlfriend, Catherine, my friends, my family. It was a great time, and I'm glad to be back, and I'm ready to rock this house, ready to do a Michael Jordan-esque performance here tonight. We got a great show ahead of us tonight on this February 13th night. We got women's professional football player Jen Welter coming on in a few minutes. And we'll also have Kewan Ratliff, ex-Gator, Bengal, Colt. For all you Gator fans, he'll be on at 8:05 tonight. So a great show ahead of us. I just want to get into my quick thoughts of what I missed in the past week. Number one was I wasn't here last week, so I didn't really get to talk about the Super Bowl, but the Ravens, congrats to Ray Lewis. I know it's late of me saying this. I didn't have a show last week, but congrats to Ray Lewis to go out on top. And the big thing I want to talk about is Kentucky basketball player Nerlens Noel out for the season after getting injured last night against the Gators. That loss is devastating to Kentucky. They're done. They lost their best player, the best rebounder, best defender. Kentucky's in trouble. They're in a world of trouble, and they took a beatdown by the Gators last night up in Gainesville. So they're in trouble. But we'll see. I mean, Calipari-led teams are usually, they're resilient, but this is just too much of a devastating injury. I also want to get into Dwight Howard. Do you guys, does my audience think Dwight Howard is overrated? If you want to call in tonight, 727-493-2055. You can text me at 727-278-9814. I think everybody is sick of Dwight Howard crying all the time. Kobe's calling him out. Shaquille's calling him out. We saw, Rick Fox just recently called him out. The guy is a cancer. Orlando's probably loving that they got rid of him. And the Lakers, they need to cut ties after this season. I hope this is a one-year deal type thing. Let him go get his money somewhere else. The guy he's not a team player. He doesn't care about the Lakers. He's a me guy, and I think he's overrated. I really do. He can't hit a free throw for crap. He's got no post moves. He's a great defender. He has that going for him. We got Matt from Minnesota, overrated. First one, so overrated right off the bat. You got me saying overrated. That's 2 versus 0. I guarantee you that it will be a unanimous overrated vote tonight. That's my prediction. But we'll see about that. The Lakers are they won. They beat New Jersey, last week? Then they had 2 terrible losses to the Celtics. We saw them lose to the Heat on Sunday, and I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. So I think they're about 3.5 back of trying to make the playoffs. So time will tell. But now I want to focus my attention. We're going to get Jen Welter on the phone. She's a women's professional football player for the Dallas Diamonds of the Women's Professional Football League, and probably can lay the lumber on some of you guys out there. So we're going to hear how it is to play football in the Women's Professional League and what made her play football. And Hello, Jen. It's CJ from Talking Sports with CJ in Tampa Bay.
Hey, CJ. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
How's life in Dallas?
Dallas is a great place. Thankfully, it warmed up a little bit today because it started off cold.
Yeah, I was in Rhode Island last week. I went from being in 30 degrees to 80 back in Tampa today, so.
Oh, yeah. My sister's up in Rhode Island, actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it was a big snowstorm last weekend. This past weekend, 25 inches. But it was a good change, I mean, Tampa you get sick of the warm all the time, the heat, and it was a good change to see some snow for once.
Yeah, when I lived in Florida, I thought I liked the snow until I actually went to Boston College, and then I realized I just liked to visit the snow and be able to leave.
Yeah, so you did go to Boston College. I did read that.
Yeah.
You got a master's degree, I believe, right?
Well, I got my undergrad from Boston College.
Okay.
I got my business degree from Boston College, and then my master's and doctorate through Capella.
Well, that's good. Yeah, and I want to ask you, first of all, growing up as a kid, what made you want to become a football player?
Well, my first sport was tennis, actually. But I grew up in Florida, and, as Florida football is like it is Texas. The town shuts down.
Right.
I'm from Vero Beach, so we had a great football team, and I've always liked the sport. Apparently the earliest memories of me, probably, I don't even know how old, tiny, putting on my cousin's football helmet, and I would make them like pull mattresses out on the back porch, and I would run the football at them, and I'd make them tackle me.
Oh, geez.
And these guys were like, you know, I mean, they were twice my size, but I just thought it was hilarious. And I actually didn't remember that story because I was so young. And this part of my family, like, you know, my grandma had gotten divorced, so we didn't see them for years until her funeral. And one of my uncles came up and he's like, "Oh my gosh, Jen, I heard about football and da-da-da." He's like, "I should have known you'd grow up to play football." And I'm looking at this guy like, "You are absolutely nuts. Who would think a girl would grow up, you know, to play football?"
Right.
And he said, "I have a present for you." And he had, you know, this picture of me with a football helmet on and my cousin and my sister. And he told me, and once he told me, I remembered it. But, I mean, it had been so long. And then going to high school, I actually was in the first graduating class of Sebastian River High School. I chose to go there because I liked, you know, what the school was going to be about. One of the things I didn't think about going in was that our sports teams would really not be so good, you know, because most of the athletes wouldn't want to leave their programs. I mean, you know, I had a swim coach for the head of our soccer team, and I remember her saying, "Oh, Jen, you play defense. Why don't you take those girls and show them how to do it?" So it wasn't the best, although we had a great time. But the coach of the football team there at the time was Randy Bethel, and he was just a great guy, you know, played for the University of Miami and then was in training camp at the Pass and, you know, started the program at Sebastian. And he always used to say I was his favorite soccer player because I took everybody out. You know, I was the sweeper. I was number 13. You know, I wore it because I said it was bad luck for them. And he'd be like, "There's my soccer girl, da-da-da." So one day I decided, you know, because our team was so bad, I said, "Coach Pepper, you say that." I said, "You should let me play football." And he looked at me and he goes, "Miss Welter, you are an athlete, and I know you could help my football team. But I'm going to ask you not to play football, and let me tell you why." I said, "All right, you know, I'm expecting girls can't play football, you know, whatever." And then I probably would have had to do it just to be a jerk.
Right.
But he said, "Number one, your boyfriend, the captain of his team, by the way," he was like, "would never, ever be able to concentrate again seeing you in football pants. Number two, guys are jerks, and football playing guys are the worst. I know I am one." And he said, "Here's what would happen because you're a great athlete. Eventually, you would make some guy look bad. Either him or one of his teammates would cheap shot you.
Right.
I would kill him and go to jail.
Oh, geez.
Miss Welter, please don't play football." And, you know, I laughed and I said, "Okay, you know, I can respect that." And when I went to college and I played rugby at Boston College, I, of course, texted him and said, "Hey, Coach Bethel, I'm playing rugby, ha." You know, he was like, "Oh, that's perfect."
That's a rough game,
and then
rugby. Yeah.
when I got asked to try out for the Mass Mutiny, which was my first team out of playing in a flag football league I was in, I told him, and he was nothing but supportive. He actually let me come work out with his football players for a bit when I was home, just to get me ready. And, you know, he's been a good supporter all throughout. I'll just kind of chime in on my football stuff, but he was a big factor in that.
Wow, yeah, and you know, going back to your story in the beginning, you were saying when you were a kid, you were the smallest, like people would pick on you. I remember being with my cousins, and I was a tackling dummy. They tell me to play offensive line, and I would always get trucked. That was my punishment. It made me think of my stories.
I'm still kind of a little one, so that hasn't changed.
No, well, I'm 235 now, so my cousins don't pick on me anymore. But when I was little,
5'2". Yeah.
I want to ask you now. You've played 12. You're going into your 12th season with the Dallas Diamonds. Who did you emulate?
I'm actually going into my 13th season.
Oh, you
overall,
played 12. Yep.
And my first 3 seasons were not with the Diamonds. I started with the Dallas Diamonds in 2004.
2004. Who did you emulate? Growing up as an NFL player, and what's your biggest honor being a football player so far?
It's hard to say who I emulated because, you know, I didn't grow up like the crazy football fanatic watching it all the time. I just liked the game. So in terms of that, I never really expected to be playing. So I wasn't really saying, oh, I'm going to play like so-and-so, though I, of course, have players I love like everybody does. And
Right.
got to respect linebackers like Ray Lewis, Urlacher. I actually, the Dallas Desperados came out and watched us one game, and they titled me Little Lynch because I was playing safety at the time and wear 47. Also love Palomalu and Rodney Harrison. I mean, just, there's so many players that are just so impressive that, I watch the game to watch players. I'll be honest. I love certain teams, of course, but a defense can win my heart over any day. Like, I can be rooting for one team, and I'll still be like, oh, my gosh, that was an amazing play, and you just sacked the quarterback of the team I was rooting for.
Yep, I'm the same way. I always love defense, too. Being a Chicago Bears fan, it's always about defense. Singletary, like you said, Urlacher, I've always been a big fan of defense, too.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, I met, speaking of Chicago's defense, I met Lance Briggs a little while ago. And he is quite an amazing person, hilarious, has a love for comic books and cooking, like just a great, well-rounded, good-humored guy. And I think that's an important thing, like, that most people don't understand is just because you are a football player or, even worse, you're a linebacker because you have kind of the worst reputation. It doesn't mean you're like some crazy mean person, It's always fun and exciting to me to meet different people and see what they're like. I remember and you'll appreciate this because about perception. So a couple of years ago with the Diamonds, they did video intros, and this was after a really long day. We'd been in lots of meetings, so I was just, particularly punchy, I guess. I'm kind of sarcastic. I'm a 5'2" linebacker. I have to have a little attitude, and most of it's humor because I'm really not mean. I tend to be the linebacker who flies under the radar and uses my speed, not, the big one that crushes everyone.
Yep.
So, I in this interview, I said, you've been playing football for so long, why do you play? And I was like, I actually play football so that I get to hit people and not go to jail. And, I mean, anybody who knows me knows I was just kidding, but, you don't really realize how those things carry out until I was in Finland, and playing for the USA team was, going back to your earlier question, one of the best honors I've ever had, winning a gold medal with the USA. That was amazing. But after we won it, these two girls from Austria came up to me, and we played Austria in the first round, so to me, we're on the same level. Yet these girls are clearly scared to talk to me. They're like, well, sir, can we get a photo with you? And I was like, sure, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you're our favorite player U.S. And I was like, cool. They're like, we know everything about you, stats, very well known. And I'm thinking, yeah, as well as a female is well known in the United States, but that's okay. We'll take a compliment. And they said, we were on our team all very scared of you as the crazy Americans. And I was like, what? I'm like, hold on. I was so small in the USA team called me Ken. Okay?
Yep.
So I'm wondering how I'm the crazy American. There are a lot of girls on that team that I would be afraid of before I would be afraid of myself. And they said, well, we watched your video and you said you play football so you can hit people and not go to jail. Is that true?
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
uh-oh. Awkward.
I was like, no, it was a joke. I was just kidding. And they were like, oh, okay.
Oh, so wow. They took it way out of context.
Sarcasm does not always translate internationally, I learned. And then I learned even more so that, that perception would carry on in the U.S. And I had no idea until I was working on my doctorate. And my uncle is an interpersonal communications professor at UConn, brilliant man, well-published, very well-respected in his field. And I had to get his assistance on my dissertation because the stats that I needed were much above my own head. And he is a genius when it comes to that stuff. So he helped me figure some of it out. And when I was up there, all these people are like, oh my gosh, your uncle talks about you all the time. We all know about it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, really? He's like, what does he say? And so he starts laughing and he's like, well, you're actually my introduction to my perception lecture with my undergrads. And I said, okay. And he said, yeah, He said, I play your Dallas Science video where you said you play football so you get to hit people and not go to jail. And then I asked them all what they think about this particular person. And he said, they all pretty much think you're crazy and one step away from jail and, all of these things. And then I quickly tell them that you're my niece. And, at the time I was working on my doctorate and that I was using, he's like, I tell them that you're my niece and you're working on your doctorate in psychology using hierarchical linear modeling and that maybe they shouldn't judge people, so quickly.
Right.
And he said, it's a great lesson for them.
Yeah.
Just like, wow.
That's amazing. That's funny. We're on the phone with Jen Welter tonight of the Dallas Diamonds. I want to ask you, when the Lingerie Football League, now called the Legends Football League, when it first became a league, what were your thoughts of that league, and how was there any animosity towards that league, or how did you take it being from playing in a different league?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, I can't really go along with the new name because I think you have to have done something before you're a legend.
Right.
That's just me.
That's what I
said. The legends I think of in football are your Tony Dorsetts, you're these guys, and I don't think they'd want to be put in that same category. But to be perfectly honest, I had to check it out for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I basically went undercover to a tryout, and I thought I was just going to make all these girls look really bad because they were playing my sport, and it was just not right.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls were so nice. Like, even though I was obviously like much better at football, they were all like, "Oh my gosh, can you show us how to do this?" And blah blah blah. And it wasn't even the same level. And I was like, oh, "Okay, here you go. Okay, here's how you catch football." And I'm showing them stuff, and they're like, "You're so good at football. You should play for the Diamonds." And I was like, "Oh, I do." And they're like, "What? What's going on?" And I was really there, like, kind of showing out. And
right.
And at the end of it, Mitch Mortaza asked me if I would coach the team. And, me being a player that I am, he was going to pay me a lot of money, so he said, to coach this football team. And I'm thinking, I can really save these girls a lot of difficulties that I've been through in my own career if I coach them, because I can have their backs. Like, I'm sure you can imagine some of the difficulties there.
Mm-hmm.
And, the girls and I got along really well. They had a lot of respect for our team. I actually had them all come out because while I was coaching them, I was playing. And I had them all come out and see what the games were like. And they were big fans. They would say, we play lingerie football, but our coach plays real football.
Wow.
That was, to me, that was the ideal of how the things could work together,
mm-hmm.
because we could offer them credibility and coaching that wasn't a conflict, whereas, they had obviously more marketing dollars than we did. Unfortunately, that didn't end up working so well. I was a little bit of an idealist and couldn't end up supporting the way Mitch was towards his goals. And so we parted on not so good terms. But in terms of the girls who played for me that I coached, I
mm-hmm.
made some very dear friends that I will have for the rest of my life.
Wow. That's a good story.
Yeah.
I want to ask you real quick. President Obama came out a few weeks ago saying if he had a son, he would maybe be a little leery about having him play football. I don't know. Do you have children, or if you don't mind me asking?
I don't have any children.
No.
I have a goddaughter and a brand new nephew, but that's about as close as I have.
Now, if you had a son, what Obama said about having, he'd be leery about his son playing. Now, you playing football at a professional level, would you be leery about your son playing if you had a child?
I think one of the most important things in terms of sports and for kids and for growing up, is doing the right things the right way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the problems that they're having now are because people weren't educated about, what does it mean to have a concussion? What does it mean in terms of time and recovery and, any of those things. Protection has gotten a lot better. I've become an advocate for what's called the Guardian helmet cover, and it's a soft pad used to go over helmets. And 75% of the concussions occur in practice. So, something like that where you can minimize the helmet-to-helmet contact, which is really, what the problem is hard versus hard, can alleviate a lot of that. I I would never be able to tell my kid not to do something that I was so passionate about.
Right.
What I would have to say is that you learn to do it the right way. You learn with the right tackling techniques, and you wear the best of the gear, and you do all of the things that you can do to really take care of yourself. I mean, I'm probably overly cautious about some of that stuff, but, I learned to tackle playing rugby. And that means that I learned to tackle with no pads and no helmet. I attribute a lot of my success and longevity in football to playing rugby, because I wasn't necessarily going for the same hits. I was going for a short tackle, a wrap up and drop. And anybody who knows rugby and has seen me play football comments on that, because there are a lot of things that I do that are very rugby-esque. And so what that tells me is that a lot of it comes down to coaching and how you're telling them to tackle. If you're avoiding certain things, you're going to be more protected. Again, do I hate to hear about this stuff? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does the NFL have the resources to be able to improve upon those things? Absolutely. And USA Football has become a great advocate for like heads up tackling and some of those great programs that, I don't think you can take the game away. I think you just have to do your best to teach at all levels, like the best possible techniques, give all levels access to the best possible equipment, even auxiliary things like the Guardian, which may not be, traditional, but hey, if they can save me a concussion in practice or, save a kid a concussion in practice, I'm absolutely going to advocate it. And then, you put those things in place and the expectation changes on how you hit and how you tackle. And it doesn't become an outsider thing. It becomes how the game is played, and it's just played at a safer level. Because nobody would say that the tackles they make in rugby aren't good tackles or well done, and yet they don't have the amount of concussion problems that the football players do, because they don't have that invincibility, I guess, that a helmet gives you sometimes.
Right.
Or perceived invincibility, I should say.
No, I agree. My problem was in high school. I used to lean with my helmet all the time. I played safety, linebacker, and I used to always lean with my helmet. And that would be against.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, most people do.
With the crown of my helmet, and I knew it was dangerous. And I had a couple concussions, and they're not. Back then, they weren't treated as good as they are now, but they're not nothing to laugh about. I mean, they're dangerous. They can affect you long term if you get enough of them. We've seen that.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had my first concussion. I like to say football makes me pretty. But playing rugby, I don't know how much you know about rugby, but to score, you actually have to touch the ball down, which is where the term touchdown came from. It's not just breaking the play, you actually have to physically touch it down. Well, I caught a really large girl from behind, and she was at the try line, and instead of letting her score, I pulled her back. And, basically her butt broke my nose.
Oh, geez. Ouch.
And I had a broken nose, a concussion, and 2 black eyes for my birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm such a lady.
Yeah. Jeez.
But, I definitely did experience the concussion factor. However, I think a lot of it, again, is doing things the right way. That's not technically a form tackle, I can tell you, and I would not attempt that one ever again.
Worst injury. I guess that was it.
Yeah, that was the worst injury, yeah.
Well, Jen, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for coming on tonight. It was really good to talk to you, and good luck this upcoming season.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure,
And we'll get you on real soon, and we'll be rooting for you. Take out somebody on a sack or something this year.
That's right,
on a blitz,
absolutely. Yeah. And if you guys can keep up with me, I am on Facebook. Just look up Jen Welter or Welter47@gmail is my email, so that's probably the easiest way to search. I'm also on Twitter, Locker Dome, LinkedIn, and my personal website, which is under construction right now, but it's being redone, is JenWelter.com.
JenWelter.com. Well, there you go. That's Jen Welter, and thanks for coming on my show tonight.
Always a pleasure. You guys have a great night.
Yep. Thank you, Jen.
Bye-bye.
Good night. That was a good interview. We get it from a woman's perspective playing football. So there you hear it. I mean, we always get men football players. It's good to hear from a woman's perspective on playing an aggressive game like football, and that was a really good interview. We're going to be getting Kewan Ratliff on in about 8 minutes or so, 8 to 9 minutes. So in the meantime, I'm going to get into an NFL segment. I'm going to get into Michael Vick. This shocked me the other day when I read that Michael Vick signed a 1-year contract to stay with the Philadelphia Eagles. He signed a 1 year. It's going to be, he can make up to $10 million on this deal. And it was surprised me because I really thought at the end of last season that Michael Vick's tenure in Philly was done. But now it makes sense. You know, Chip Kelly comes on. He runs that type of offense where you need a fast, mobile quarterback, and I don't think Nick Foles fits that role. And I think this is Michael Vick's job to lose as quarterback of the Eagles. He fits this offense. I mean, the offensive line's going to have to protect. They were horrid last year. I mean, they were just as bad as the Bears' offensive line, and they're going to have to protect him because he's not a big quarterback, and he took a beating. But I think he can run this offense, and I think it's smart to bring Michael Vick back for one more year and see what he can do. I mean, $10 million, you really don't have a lot to lose, and let Nick Foles battle for the job. But I think this whole signing is, I think Michael Vick is meant for him to be the starting quarterback, and I just think it's smart. Chip Kelly's offense, we'll see if it works. And one thing I was reading is the quarterbacks in Chip Kelly's offense run the ball 62% of the time, which that's a lot. I don't know if that's going to work in the NFL. You're talking about faster defenders, better, faster, bigger defensive linemen, linebackers that can run, guys in the secondary that are blazing fast. So I don't know if this offense will work, but we'll see. Time will tell if Chip Kelly's offense will work. But I think Michael Vick behind the controls of this offense is a lot better than Nick Foles. So I want to jump in that. I want to jump into baseball too with King Felix Hernandez re-signing with Seattle, $175 million over 7 years, highest paid pitcher in baseball history. Is he worth the money? I don't know. I mean, you're talking about he's 98 and 76 with a 3.22 ERA in 8 seasons. That's all right, but then you look on he's pitched great, but then you look at the Seattle Mariners offense. They're talking about an offense that's had the lowest batting average in baseball the past 3 seasons. So he's not getting much run support. So, I mean, is he worth it? I don't know if they're going to build a winner in Seattle. I mean, what do they have besides him? But he got his payday. Seattle has him locked up till the 2019 season, so it's going to be interesting to see if they add some pieces to this team because they're far off from competing, especially in that division. When you see Hamilton going to the Angels, Josh Hamilton, Texas is still going to be good again, regardless of who they lost. They're still going to be a competitive team. They have the pitching. In Oakland, Billy Beane always has a way to get the A's going. I mean, that surprises me. Every season, the Oakland A's lose players, and they always seem to be competing towards the end of the season on a small payroll. It's almost like the Rays. They started that whole small market baseball, that team that can compete with the big boys. And I want to get into the NBA. We talked about the Lakers, the drama in Los Angeles. Is this Laker team, can they come back? Mike Brown, the coach who was fired by the Lakers early in the season, seems to think that they're not done yet, that this team, if they can sneak into the playoffs, they can be a dangerous team. And any team with Kobe Bryant will be dangerous in the playoffs. But, right now, adversity that's this team is going through. Paul Gasol's out 6 to 8 weeks with an injury. Dwight Howard has been a cancer on this team. He's saying he won't play in regular season games, but he wants to play in the All-Star game. I mean, come on, Dwight. I mean, you're playing for the Lakers now. You're not playing for Orlando. You're playing for a team, history-rich team that's always had a great center. You're talking about the Wilt Chamberlains, the George Mikens, the Shaquille O'Neal, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. This is a team that's always had a great center, and if Dwight Howard wants to fill all those shoes, he better start getting on the ball because his tenure in L.A. is not going to last. And we've had some people tuning in. I've had a bunch of texts. I was during my interview, and right now I got 5 Dwight Howard overrated to 0 underrated. So that's how the people feels about Dwight Howard. They had 2 bad losses, the Lakers, to Boston and Miami last week. They came back. They beat Charlotte. They won last night against Phoenix. They're 25-28. They're, I think, 3.5 games out of the playoff spot. So they're still hanging in there, and there's a long way to go. Long season to go, 82 games. I wouldn't count the Lakers out yet. They had to win last night, though. They couldn't lose to a bad Suns team. Kobe has had a feud with you've seen him with a feud with Shaq before, but this is different. Shaq came out to play. Kobe would rip him, but Shaq was always there to play. Shaq always carried that team. I don't think you can say the same about Dwight Howard. He really, since he's been in the league, he's never really developed that inside move. We saw Olajuwon had Hakeem Olajuwon had the fadeaway, the fake fadeaway type shot. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had the sky hook. Dwight Howard has not really developed that type of move. And he's a horrid free throw shooter. I mean, probably just as bad as Shaquille O'Neal. At least Shaq was so dominant where it kind of, overlapped his free throw shooting. But Dwight Howard is just, defensively, he's a beast, but offensively, I just don't trust him in big-time games. And Kobe is right. There is a sense of urgency in L.A., and he's right for call-out Dwight Howard. I mean, the doctor said he could play with his shoulder injury. He didn't want to. He was medically cleared, and this team was fading out of the playoff race, and Kobe was right to call out Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard's dad came out saying, ripping the coach, D'Antoni, ripping Kobe. Dwight Howard's dad needs to stay out of it. This is not his battle. His son's a big boy. He's, 26, 27 years old. He doesn't need his dad fighting his battles. So, but moving right along to LeBron James, who broke an NBA record last night. LeBron is just the most physically gifted athlete I've ever seen in my life. First player to score 30 points and shoot 60% in 6 straight games. He scored 30 and 11 of 15 shooting last night in a victory over Portland last night. And listen to this stat. He's made 66 of his past 92 shots in 6 games. That is freaking amazing. I couldn't do that if I was near the hoop. And we're talking about a guy, takes all kinds of shots. And plus he's made 60 of 80 for 75% in his last 188 minutes on the court. Those are scary stats. Those are PlayStation type stats. And LeBron is just getting better. Will he be better than Jordan? He's not better than Jordan at the moment, but down the line, why not? I mean, he's physically gifted. He's a freak of nature. Just a great basketball player. And I think maybe down the line he will become the greatest basketball player of all time. Not now, though. He'll never ever be a Michael Jordan. I want to move on to one college basketball note and the mediocrity in college hoops. Indiana loses to Illinois last week on a buzzer beater, but it's still number 1 in the country. That's the mediocrity of being number 1 this year. I don't think there's no clear-cut dominant team in college basketball at the moment, from what I've seen. You got some good teams, but there's not the dominant teams like we used to have in the past, like the Dukes, the Connecticut when they were good in their span, Georgetown in the 80s. It's not that dominant team. Teams that are number 1 are 5-5 in the past 5 weeks. That's bad. That's terrible. Second ranked teams are only 6-4 in that span. So this shows the parity in college basketball right now that anybody can win. So we will see. This is going to be a fun March Madness tournament in 5 weeks, and I think it's up for grabs. I mean, you have some good teams, and don't count out the Hurricanes. The Miami Hurricanes are looking pretty damn good right now. That Larkin kid can play. They're going to be a dangerous team tournament time. I want to get into one NHL hockey note, and the Chicago Blackhawks are just, on a tear. They lost last night on a shootout, but they're 10-0-3, 3 games away from tying the best start for 16 games by the 06-07 Ducks. They haven't lost a game in regulation yet. Corey Crawford, 1.62 goals against. Best in the Western Conference. He's been one of the better goalies in the league. He shocked me. And their road warriors, 8-0-2 on the road this season. They haven't lost a road game in regulation. That's hard to do, to go into arenas and do that, especially the teams they've beat. They've beat Phoenix twice, L.A., San Jose, Nashville. Very good playoff teams on the road. And their penalty kill is 92.9. Ranked, it's the best. It's tied with the Bruins for the best in the league. And then, and a scary stat now, 22 of their last 36 games are at home. So we're talking about a team that's going to be dangerous and at the United Center, at the loud building, home crowd advantage, always sold out. So they're I'd say they're an early pick to win the Stanley Cup, the Blackhawks, and they have the core, the Tays, the Canes, the Marion Hoses. So they're going to be a dangerous team. We're about to get Kewan Ratliff on the phone. Talk some NFL. We're talking about his career, and I want to ask about what it was playing for Steve Spurley, the old Bull coach at Florida. Get into that tonight.
Hello?
Hey, Kewan, it's CJ from Talking Sports with CJ in Tampa Bay. How are you tonight?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. You're an ex-Gator. I have a lot of Gator fans that listen, and, second-round draft pick, so it's good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. I want to ask you now, you're from Ohio, great football state. We know Ohio State, how rich tradition that college is. What made you choose Florida, and what was it like playing in the swamp?
Being an Ohio kid, I had many, many cold winters. So being 17 years old, coming down to visit Gainesville in January, I don't know the exact weather, but I know it was very cold when I left Columbus. And when I landed, the first thing they did was give me a pair of shorts and a T-shirt.
Oh, geez.
And I haven't looked back since.
What's it like playing in that stadium, the Swamp? I mean, we're talking about a loud stadium, a stadium that sells out every game, great college town. What was it like?
Like you said, it was a different atmosphere because it's a college town. The only thing in Gainesville is the university,
right?
Really. So to be from a bigger city, well, not really a bigger city, but more of a city feel than the country feel of Gainesville, being in Ohio State or in Columbus, there were times when you would be on campus and you wouldn't even know it. But being in Gainesville, you knew it because you seen orange and blue signs everywhere, the street signs, everything was orange and blue. And then when you walk into the Swamp, it was one of the loudest stadiums that I had ever heard in my life. And it was just an atmosphere and a feeling that I got from day one that I wanted to be a part of that.
And, you know, in Gainesville, NFL teams are not really popular. I mean, it's just Gators. I mean, the city shuts down literally on a Saturday.
It really does. I mean, because everyone is for the Gators in Gainesville. Because, like you said, there's no NFL team. There's no NBA team. There's nothing really else in the city to go off of except for the Gators.
Now, you played for the old Bull coach. I want to ask you now, Steve Spurrier, big name in Florida. You know, played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was a Heisman winner. What was it like playing for him as a him being a coach? What was it like playing for him?
Honestly, I believe he was one of those coaches that you either love him or you hate him.
Yep.
Because he's never going to sugarcoat anything. He's going to give it to you straight. And the guys that, you know, couldn't take it, they would hate him. And the guys who could loved him. I loved him because I never had to guess what he was thinking. If he was upset with me, he let me know. If he was happy with me, he let me know. But he never bit his tongue, and he never held back his feelings. So I loved his style of coaching.
You know, one of his funny sayings was, "You can't spell citrus without UT." That was one of my favorite quotes he ever said, cracking all over Tennessee.
Yeah, he had that. He had the Free Shoes University
Yep.
of Florida State. He had a lot of good ones.
And I know when he went to the Redskins, he was talking about the rivalry with Dallas when he became head coach of the Redskins, and he said, "We're going to make the Dallas Cowboys, like when I was at Florida, they're going to be our Georgia Bulldogs." So I remember him saying that too. He's always had the best quotes, one of the best quotable guys in college and NFL history.
It's exactly. He's one of those coaches that you love to talk to because he's going to tell you exactly how he feels at the moment.
Now, you also played for Ron Zook, who replaced Spurrier, and, you know, he had big shoes to fill. We all know that. I mean, and I don't know why he would even want to take that position because of the shoes to fill. Do you think Zook got a raw deal in Florida?
I really do because, like you said, he walked into an environment that was set up for failure. To come in behind a coach like Coach Spurrier, not only him being a great coach, but him being a great player at that school as well, to come in and try to duplicate what he did throughout the 90s and the early 2000s with the SEC championships and the SEC East titles, to try to come in and fill those shoes was almost impossible. But the things he did, the first national championship, or the second national championship, I believe, in '06, were pretty much all of his guys.
Right.
Those are a lot of the guys that he recruited, a lot of guys that were playing as freshmen my senior year were instrumental in them bringing that championship home. So I feel like he was almost the Tony Dungy to the John Gruden in Tampa Bay.
That's a great comparison.
Urban Meyer.
You know, and when he was hired by Florida, was he even the first choice? Because I thought, wasn't Bob Stoops one of the candidates for that job when Spurrier left, if I can recall? Going back, I don't think Zook was the first
honestly, choice. I heard probably 20 names throughout that process, and I'd never heard Ron Zook's name until the day he was hired.
And when I heard his name, I'm like, who? And I believe he came from the Saints at the time. Wasn't he like the Saints coaching staff?
He was the special teams coordinator for the Saints at the time.
So everyone at games was like, who's this guy? You know, coming in to fill. I mean, everybody was mad at Spurrier left, number one, and then he's coming in, and you're right. It's just he wasn't going to win that deal no matter what, unless he won championships.
Unless we won a national championship in his first 2 years, I believe the writing was on the wall with him.
Right. No, well said. You were also the SEC Defensive Player of the Year in '03 for the Gators. Describe what it's like playing in the SEC, and how did it get you ready to play in the NFL, playing in such a great conference with great athletes?
Well, it's funny because pretty much every wide receiver and quarterback I faced week in and week out in the SEC, I've seen them at some point in the NFL.
Right.
Whether it was preseason, they were a teammate, regular season, after games, before games. You run into so many SEC guys that it's just unbelievable. But being in the SEC, you get to face that type of competition not only in practice, but every week. So when you get to the NFL, it's not that big of an adjustment as far as the speed goes because you're used to it. But now the defensive and offensive linemen and the bigger guys get a little faster. But as far as the skill positions, I think it's pretty much tit for tat.
Well, it's hands down the best conference in football. I mean, anytime there's an SEC game, I'm a big Notre Dame fan, but I always watch SEC games. I love watching the Gators living in Florida and all the big battles when it's Georgia, Florida, LSU, Bama. You know, it's always fun games to watch.
They're always good games because you have a lot of variety in the SEC. You have guys that still run the spread. You have teams that come out and want to run the pro-style offense. You have teams that come out and want to run the pistol. So you have every style of football in every other conference all mixed in one, along with the talent, which makes it the greatest conference, in my opinion.
Right. No, I agree. Being a Gator, which team did you despise the most? Is it Georgia? Is it Tennessee? Or is it Florida State, a non-conference team?
Honestly, to me, it was Florida State. I tell people all the time I didn't look at Georgia as a rival because I was 4-0 against them.
Yep.
Tennessee was a rival, but it really wasn't a bitter rival. The Florida State game was bitter because we had to see those guys all year.
Mm-hmm.
We partied at the same nightclubs. We trained together in all seasons. A lot of guys went to high school together. Most of the people had family, and were related. So that was more personal. That was more in your face. As whereas the Tennessee guys, we would only see those guys once a year.
No, I agree, and I see that all the time. Just that rivalry with Florida State, and even the fans, the student body. It's just such a big game every year.
It really is because you have a lot of kids that go to University of Florida that are Florida State fans, and vice versa. They grew up rooting for the other one, but maybe didn't get accepted into school or got more money for the other. So you have people cheering against you right on your own campus for that other school.
No, that's true. We're on the phone with Keon Ratliff, ex-Gator, ex-Bengal. We're going to get into the NFL days now. You were drafted in the second round by the Cincinnati Bengals. What was it like to get drafted that high? And my second part of that question is, what was it like to go back to Ohio, your home state, playing for the Bengals?
I mean, first and foremost, it was a dream come true. I mean, I was blessed to be able to play the sport that I loved and grew up always wanting to do. And just to be drafted, let alone be drafted in my home state, was a dream come true. And I went far away from home to play college, so my family only got to see me play when we played at Tennessee, at Kentucky, at Vanderbilt, or they would come down for maybe one game a year. Mm-hmm. So to be able to be drafted close to home and be within an hour and a half drive from my mom's house was amazing. I mean, I got to still go home on those Fridays when we got out of work early. I got to go home and watch my high school team play still and get some of Mom's home cooking. So I mean, it was great for me.
You grew up in Ohio. Were you a Browns or Bengals fan?
Actually, I was a San Francisco 49er fan.
Wow, yeah, there was some good teams back in the 90s.
I met Mr. DeBartolo when I was young.
Wow.
When I was very, very young, so I was always a fan of his because once I found out, he had Youngstown ties, and so I was a fan of anything Youngstown when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. YSU, Youngstown State was my team growing up. San Francisco 49ers were also my team.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, if you're a Browns fan, I'd feel bad for you. We know what they go through.
My whole family was Browns. They were either Browns or Steelers.
Yep.
So I went against the grain and went with the 49ers.
And you always feel bad for Cleveland in general, not just with the Browns, the Cavs, with LeBron leaving, and then you see with the Cleveland Indians, they've had some near misses in the World Series. I mean, you just feel bad for Cleveland as a sports town sometimes.
You really have to. I still got my fingers crossed that maybe somehow later in his career, LeBron may come back and try to get him one.
Possibly, yeah. I would like to see that again. I mean, I was mad at LeBron when he did. I wasn't a Cavs or Heat fan, but I was mad how it was all done with the decision. But I got to say, he's so physically gifted, and what an athlete. I mean, just the way he's become, and I mean, he might become better than Jordan down the line.
Physically, I think he's the most gifted physical specimen in the game's
Right.
ever seen.
Hands down.
And as far as just technically and skill-wise, I'm still biased to Jordan because growing up, everybody wanted to be like Mike.
Oh,
so
of course, yeah.
I'm still biased to Michael Jordan, but like you said, who knows what the future has for LeBron? He's on the same level, that's for sure.
No, he's getting better. That's the scary part. I don't know how much better he can get.
Yeah, you never know because they were saying the same thing about him, his rookie second year. He's still increasing his game every year.
No, I agree. Going back to your Bengal days, you played for Marvin Lewis. Describe him as a coach. Defensive-minded guy, came over from the Ravens, was a defensive coordinator. Describe him as a coach.
Well, Coach Lewis is a very patient coach. He's not really a big yeller. He's not really into the arguing and the back and forth. He's more of a calm coach, and when he's upset, you'll know he's upset. But he has kind of a sarcastic laugh when he's upset. But he's one of those coaches, like you said, is defensive minded. He knows everything that he's talking about. So if he asks you a question, he already knows the answer to it. So, but he's very detail oriented. But at the same time, he lets you be a player. So, I mean, I loved and enjoyed playing for Coach Lewis because he always allowed me to be who I was.
Now, you also went against, I know you definitely went in practice against Chad Ochocinco, Chad Johnson. What's he like as a personality? I mean, he seems like he's just a fun guy from what I see.
I loved my time being around Chad because the first day I was drafted that Saturday. The Sunday you go in, meet the media. The first person I run into was Chad Johnson.
Wow.
It's 8 a.m, he's standing there waiting on me. He got his cleats, gloves, everything. Come on, let's go do one-on-ones, rookie. So if you have a wide receiver that's one of the best in the game at his position, and he loves to work, and he loves to compete, and he's always talking and always in your face, he's going to get the best out of you every day. Even those days when you didn't feel like practicing, Chad is going to come out talking and acting crazy for the crowd, so you have to be ready to go.
And his touchdown celebration dances were always the best when he was on Cincinnati.
The best dances he actually did used to be in practice. Because in practice, he wouldn't get fined, so he could really go crazy at practice.
Now, you were on that Bengals team in 2005 that lost to the Steelers, right, in the playoffs, that wild card game?
Yes, I was on that team.
Right. Now, Carson Palmer, that hit he took, did you guys believe that was dirty in that game?
I believe if that was Tom Brady, we wouldn't be having this discussion, and we would have had a lot more calls that went our way that game, and who knows what could have happened. But being that Carson wasn't on that level, I don't think he got the same respect as a lot of the other elite quarterbacks in the league at the time. And at that time, I feel like Carson was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And or if not, he was on his way to being one of the tops. He was mentioned in the same breath as those guys. So that kind of hurt us, not only that season, but for the next few seasons after that, because not only did we lose Carson in that play, we lost Chris Henry on that same play.
Right, yeah. No, I do remember that game like it was yesterday. I remember that game, wild card game, Sunday game, and that was a good game, and I thought you guys were going to beat the Steelers going in, and I always thought it was a dirty hit going. When watching that hit, from my viewpoint, I thought it was a dirty hit.
Honestly, I'm just being biased because I was on the Bengals. If I was on the Steelers at the time, I probably would have said it was a clean hit. So, but during the game, it didn't get fined, it didn't get penalized, so it was a clean hit.
Right, no, that's true. I just had a text from a listener of mine. He wants to know, what was your favorite stadium you played in the NFL?
My favorite stadium? It had to be Washington.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Redskins.
The Redskins gave me that college feel again. They had a band. They had the cheerleaders. It just felt like I was back in school again, coming out, running out, and hearing the band play. It just brought back a certain atmosphere, a certain vibe to the game.
Redskins, yeah, and that's such a great football city too, Washington D.C. Great teams over the years, and you see it with the band and the cheerleaders. It looks like a great stadium to play in. What about? I'm a big Bears fan. Did you play in Soldier Field?
Yes, I did.
Was it like playing in there? That's a cold. If you.
I hate it, exactly. I hate it. It was freezing. The ground was hard. The grass was terrible. it was a bad day. I got an interception in that game, so it wasn't all bad.
There you go. There you go. I want to ask you now, you've played for Cincinnati, you've played for Indy, Pittsburgh. What was your biggest moment in the NFL, and who was the best receiver you went against in the NFL?
My biggest moment in the NFL, I probably would have to say catch an interception on Monday night against Peyton Manning.
Wow! Oh yeah.
Because that was in Cincinnati. My son was there. My family were there, and it was Peyton Manning. I still look at Peyton Manning as the greatest of the collection of quarterbacks that I played against. Even though a lot of people will say Tom Brady and argue about some other quarterbacks, but Peyton was the quarterback that you knew when he came to the line, he would tell you what you were doing. No matter what, he would know when you were blitzing. He would know when you were dropping. He would know when you were a man-to-man. So to be able to catch an interception on him on Monday night in front of my family and friends and everyone there, that was my biggest moment, I believe.
Great moment
in my NFL career.
And who was the best receiver you went against in the NFL, would you say?
See, and people laugh at me a lot of times when I say it, but I believe Jimmy Smith was the best receiver
from Jacksonville. I faced. Yeah, I remember him. He was a great receiver. He played a long time.
Yeah, I was young, and it was my first or second year in the NFL, and I had no chance with him. I had no. He was his routes all looked the same. He ran them all at the same speed, the same pad level, and every time I tell people, they say, "Oh, what about Calvin Johnson or Andre Johnson and some of those guys?" Those guys weren't as hard for me to cover, even though they are all great. I mean, none of those guys are easy cover. It was just something about Jimmy Smith on that day that he got the best of me.
Wow, that's great. I mean, he's a great receiver. He played a long time. I want to ask you real quick my last question, and I know you probably hear his name a lot, being a Gator, Tim Tebow. You never played with him. I know that. But being a ex-Gator, do you think he can play at the NFL level as a quarterback? Because I don't. I really don't. I just not sold on the guy. I don't know. What's your thoughts on him?
But see, once again, I want to give you the right answer, but I'm a Gator, so my Gator background won't allow me to give you that answer.
There you go.
But I mean, I'm a fan of Tebow's, but honestly, as an NFL every down quarterback, I'm not so sure. If I had my GM hat on, I would go out and hire Tim.
Wow.
He was one of the greatest college players ever, but college and NFL are totally different.
Right. No, I agree.
So I would love to see someone give him an opportunity to prove everyone wrong, but I'm not so sure he'll get that chance.
Wow, that's true. Well, Keyone, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. It was a great interview. All my Gator listeners are happy you were coming on, and it was a great interview. Thanks for coming on tonight.
No, I appreciate you for having me.
Oh yeah, no problem. And you have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. Have a good night. That was Keyone Ratliff, ex-Gator. Great show. 2 great interviews tonight. I just want to say tomorrow night's Valentine's Day. I want to say, happy Valentine's Day to my girlfriend, Catherine. I love you. I wish I was there with you, but I just wanted to wish you happy Valentine's Day on the air. So, and any guy out there, just treat your lady nice on Valentine's Day. It's only one day a year. So, but next week we'll be back with a great show. We're working on getting a big guest. I will have on a New York Post writer. It's a surprise. I'm going to surprise it next week. I'll tell you, it's Ken Davidoff. He's a writer for the Yankees. He'll be coming on next week, and we're going to be working on getting another big name on. So I'm going to tell you who it is. And in 2 weeks, we're going to have Del Harris on, too, ex-Laker coach. So that's going to be an amazing show, too. So I want to thank Keyone Ratliff for coming on, Jen Welter. This is CJ Mundy for Talking Sports with CJ on SportsSlamRadio.com. Have a good night.
It's Talking Sports with CJ and Fonz on SportsSlamRadio.com. It's sports hardcore and fully uncensored.